In this vlog, I want to talk about conspicuous consumption. Now, conspicuous consumption is not a new term. It's been used centuries ago, but gained more mainstream status when the Norwegian American economist Thorstein Veblen wrote a book on the theory of the leisure class, and since then that term got a more prominent position in economics and everyday life, really. Now, conspicuous consumption basically refers to consumption activity where you buy things not because there's like really a physical need for it, meaning it doesn't pertain to your physical subsistence, but is more about the psychological subsistence where you buy and acquire things to display your status, signal your status, or even buy things to gain status, where you create an image for yourself, where you then become accepted in other or higher layers of society. Now, this is quite important in this day and age, not so much in the past, meaning, in the past it was mostly the very rich, the aristocracy participating in conspicuous consumption, where they just, make a big thing out of being wasteful and buying a lot of things which they don't really need just because they can, and to show off their superiority to the lower classes, where the lower classes didn't really participate much in this pattern because they're too busy trying to survive and looking after their physical subsistence, that they don't really have many resources available to divert towards this type of psychological subsistence. But then as time went on and people's income started to go up, this conspicuous consumption pattern did become more relevant and started growing. For instance, in the past, you had a nice middle class that emerged, and back then people's reference group in terms of who they compare themselves to in terms of what they have and their own sense of status was their own neighborhood. So alright, they would, for instance, look at their neighbors and see, okay, what does everyone have in the neighborhood? And if someone buys themselves a nice new barbecue, it's like, maybe I should also get myself a nice barbecue because I don't want to feel left out or be seen as lagging behind in my own financial status or whatever. But the conspicuous consumption was still fairly self-limiting because your reference group, your neighborhood, was mostly also people who were in the same income bracket as you were, so you'd still pretty much stay within the limitations of your income and you wouldn't go and do crazy things. Then, prices start going up and the richest income keeps going up, keeping up with inflation, going up wide above inflation, while middle income and lower classes, their incomes kind of start lagging behind. So then what started happening was that whereas you used to have a one paycheck family, now some families are starting to send the wife as well to go to work, to join the labor force, so that they can have more money to keep up with prices and retain their purchasing power, basically. So now you can start seeing in the neighborhood, people are starting to have different incomes. You have your one paycheck families and you have your two paycheck families. And now, the point of conspicuous consumption starts to already escalate a bit more because you're faced with a wider range of incomes. Now also, as both the husband and the wife join the workforce, their social setting, their environment is not so much their neighborhood, but more the workplace. So instead of comparing themselves to their neighbors, they're now going to start comparing themselves to people in the workplace. Now in the workplace, you again have a wider range of incomes, because you have your own income, that of your colleagues, but you also have more superiors or people below you. And what started happening was that people started comparing their own consumption pattern to that of their bosses. So there you can see it starts stretching it, and people start buying according to what they hear their boss has, what they hear their boss is doing with their family, where they are going on holiday. And now that's what they are trying to live up to as well. And yeah, so you have that stage of development, and then, you know, prices keep going up. You already have two people in the family working. You know, you can't do more to retain your purchasing power. So what happens then was credit boom. Everyone starts going on credit to maintain their purchasing power, to maintain their level of status, as well as maintaining that drive to buy more and emulate the higher classes above you. And yeah, in this day and age, this point of conspicuous consumption has gotten completely out of hand, where you know, it used to be just looking at your neighbor. Now you have the majority of the people trying to emulate the lifestyles of the top 18%. I mean, that is like, you know, out of this world. It's not sustainable. Where it used to be only a small proportion of your income going towards something like conspicuous consumption, where you buy things because of how it feeds your image to society. Now there's like a lot of money going towards it, a lot bigger proportion of people's income. I mean, almost half the people in America are living in debt, and they are spending more money than they are earning. Yet they all have these fancy cars. You'll see them have the newest cell phone, but when you ask them, how are you doing, they'll tell you they're barely surviving, they're just getting by. So yeah, it's quite interesting, because in a way we do have a higher living standard, meaning, you know, there's a lot more technology, there's a lot more we can do with our lives, yet we still feel poor, yet we still feel like we don't have enough. I mean, if you also look at how this pattern of conspicuous consumption changes our idea of living standard, where in the past a flat screen TV, a computer, internet were seen as luxuries. Now they are listed as absolute necessities, like, if you don't have this, well, you're missing out, and you should have those things. So how we prioritize and view things evolves with this whole conspicuous consumption pattern. And now, you know, our reference is not even the workplace anymore or our neighbors. Our reference is the media, TV, magazines. Now we are trying to emulate what we see in magazines and in movies, which is like the lifestyle of the rich and famous, and the lives you see of fictional characters in series and movies. You know, they don't live like realistic lives. I mean, you see in series they keep crashing cars, and yet every next episode they have a new, brand new SUV that they're driving, with kids that are like, what, 16 years old, you know. So that lifestyle that's being portrayed in movies, in TV series, is completely unrealistic. Yet that's what's being fed to us as the ideal, and that's what we try to then emulate, and how we direct our purchases. And yeah, it's kind of sad, because for the majority part of history, you know, we've always lived in survival. We've always struggled to get to a point where we can stop surviving and start living, you know, where you earn more than to just tend to your physical needs, where you can have extra, where you have extra money that you can spend towards things that you enjoy, things that you value. And it's like, once that point was in place in history, instead of spending our money towards something worthwhile, it's like we fell for the trap that consumption equals freedom. And any money that we have too much, we just kind of waste. It just goes towards this decadent lifestyle in the end. And with a decadent lifestyle, you know, we're just trying to be like the rich and famous and try and achieve this ideal which lies completely outside of our range, where you work yourself to death, you have a lot of stress, you have a lot of debt, no time to spend on your hobbies, so you then just live this lifestyle of work and spend, where you work and your spending is then your release, where you do what you enjoy. Just ridiculous. And you know, because if you look at the world now, we're in serious trouble. We've got major inequality. The world's ecology and environment is going down the drain, and change in this world isn't going to come from the poor people, from the people who experience the damages that have been done onto society and the planet the most. You know, they're the ones who would really like things to change, but they don't have the capacity to change because they're poor, they don't have money to do so. So it's really kind of up to the middle class to demand change and work towards change, yet we're the ones who are completely enthralled with this fictional reality where we want to have all these amazing gadgets and clothes that we completely forget about what's going on in the world. And I mean, the change is not going to come from the rich. I mean, they like the way things are going. So I think it's an important point to realize is that, you know, we've gotten to this point where we have a nice lifestyle, where we have extra, and yet now that we're finally there to that point where we can do something substantial with our lives, we just throw it all away with our consumerism. So this is quite interesting because in terms of a living income guaranteed as well, we realize just providing an income for everyone, or making sure that everyone is at least at subsistence level, is not necessarily be the only change that is required. Meaning, if you look at people at different layers of income, when you ask them, you know, most of them are just getting by. Then you ask them, well, how much more money would you need to be happy? And then this layer will say, oh, just give me 50,000 a year more, and then I'll be happy, and then I have what I need. But then if you ask the guy who is earning that much money, he says, no, give me 100,000. And then the next one up says, well, I need 500,000 more. So there's never enough, because we've created this structure of consumerism that is not able to be satisfied. So we will always want more. So it's not just enough to give everyone money and expect that everyone will be happy and satisfied, because obviously there's this whole psychological factor involved that needs to change, which is also part of the paradigm shift we promote that needs to take place. We can't just keep living the lifestyle we're living now. So as part of the living income guaranteed, we also propose that money and consumption becomes a bigger subject and theme in education. I mean, when I went to primary school or high school, we got taught very little about money and how to manage money and how to budget and how to direct money in your life in general. You only start learning about these things as you are receiving an income, and then you go through this whole path of trial and error that is completely unnecessary, to then in the end realize, like, oh, okay, this is how I have to manage my money, and yet you're still in conflict within yourself, because you see all these nice gadgets that everyone has, yet you don't really have enough money, but your friends are doing it and your family is doing it. And I mean, this whole way of how we are working with money, it's just not working out. So with the living income guaranteed, yes, we want to make sure that everyone has money, which is, in terms of people's physical well-being, is a very important point. But we also realize that it's not enough. We have to also bring in the point of education, teach people how to work with money, show how things are unrealistic in this world so that we can make better decisions, and so that we can start aligning our consumption patterns with what we actually value. Because if you look at it, people have money, but they're unhappy because they're just spending their money towards what society tells them to buy, instead of spending on the money that they actually value and enjoy. So if we can give everyone income and teach everyone to work with money in a way that will actually be enjoyable, I think that would be great.